Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Football. My name is John Halpin alongside Chris Palmer. How you doing, my brother?
It's always good, man. Good game. I just want to say that to you.
Good game, my friend. That was a good game between the Ravens and Steelers, and we'll get into that one.
But let me
Yeah.
ask you something.
Mhm.
Do you smell that in the air?
What is that?
Playoffs.
Ooh,
Playoffs are in the air to me. It is right around the corner. Playoff games are in sight.
yeah. This is the time where in the season games kind of feel like a little preview into the playoffs. There's some games that you from here on out where matchups. We might be seeing double of these matchups later on come January and February, so we'll have to keep an eye on them. But with that being said, Chris Palmer, you ready to start our recap?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's go back to last Thursday night with the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles coming out on top 26-18. Uh, it was a little bit of a slow game until Saquon really took it over in the second half. Got two big rushing touchdowns and just separated from there. But Eagles now lead the NFC East.
Yeah, see, it's unfortunate that I didn't get to see any of these games because living in the state of New York, we only had 3 games broadcasted all day. It was the Jets, the Bills, and then the primetime game. So every game that could have possibly been broadcasted was not shown.
Well, this was the
The
Thursday night
Thursday
game,
night
so
game.
this was on Prime.
Okay. Did I watch this game? I don't believe I watched this game. I think I fell asleep. But good win for the Eagles for sure.
Nice. So let's move to Sunday. One of the games that was not broadcasted, down in Miami, where the Las Vegas Raiders took on the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins looked back to form, 34-19. The final, Miami still alive and still in the hunt for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's good to see a revived Dolphins offense. Everyone knows they're capable of scoring points with Tua on the field, but it's against a depleted Raiders, and they need to start showing that they can do this against competition.
Yes, and I know Thanksgiving Day next week, the Dolphins will be playing the Packers on that Sunday night primetime, so
Hmm.
that is going to be an interesting game to say the least.
Yeah.
Uh, let's move to New Orleans, where the Saints and Browns played under the Superdome, and the Saints won 35-14. This was a good outing for that Saints offense.
Saints needed this win. They needed this for
Mhm.
morale. They needed this for confidence, and they needed this to stay alive. Browns, your season's done. It's unfortunate to be a Browns fan right now.
Yeah, you just got to ride out Jameis Winston for the rest of the year. So let's move to New York, where the Colts took on the Jets, and this was a game that we spoke last week with our guest John Conti. But the Colts won 28-27. This was one of those games where it was a tale of two halves. The first half was very slow, defensive oriented, and then the second half was a lot of scoring and a lot of big plays. Give it to Anthony Richardson to really facilitate that scoring drive at the end there. The Jets, man, ooh, I'm sorry, this was a rough one as well, but it's been a rough one all year.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but Joe Douglas was fired.
Yes,
So they are now
yes.
without a GM and an interim head coach.
Mhm.
But on the other side in Indiana, it's good to see that they're committing to Anthony Richardson. It's good to see these teams that bench their young quarterbacks early, putting them back in and being and committing and showing them, embracing them as quarterbacks. It's
Mhm.
good. It's a good little wave to see in the league right now.
Absolutely. Just let quarterbacks develop. Just give them time, give them reps, give them experience, and they can blossom into something good. Just quick thing on the Jets. I know last week we spoke a lot of Jets with our guest John Conti, but I do want to say I I think for the Jets, much like this was with Robert Sala, uh, I think it was the right move to move away from Joe Douglas, but the wrong time. In mid-season, right now, this whole season, you don't you don't have your head coach, you don't have your GM, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet.
Right. It's
And it's very
it's
it's
laughable.
Jets fans. My heart goes out to you, man, because it has been a painful, painful year in New York.
Yeah, no, this has been a very rough year for New York. I agree with you.
So anyway, let's move on to Tennessee, where the Vikings took on the Tennessee Titans, and it was all Vikings all day. 23-13. A little slow in the beginning, but Sam Darnold and the rest of that Vikings crew really found their groove.
Yeah, it's good. Good to see the Vikings continue to win. The Titans, they continue to not really have much of a pulse. The Titans really need to learn who they are as a team and figure out an identity before they can come up to the Vikings, who are a playoff team where it stands as of right now.
Absolutely, man. Hey, the Titans do have an identity, man. They have Mayo Man.
Stop it.
It's Mayo-tastic, man.
Mayo Man is their franchise. That's what it turned into. It went from Mike Vrabel and Ryan Tannehill to Mayo Man.
It's Mayo Man. Oh man, let's move on to Chicago. In the Windy City, Green Bay Packers came in and beat the Bears 20-19 on a blocked field goal that would have helped the Bears win this game, but this was a very painful loss in Chicago, and they've been experiencing some painful losses so far throughout this year. But man, this one was a rough one for the Bears.
Yeah, no, this one hurts for sure. Good win for the Packers. They being held to 20 points is no small feat for Chicago's defense. But good on for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the Packers later on in this episode. Let's move on to Detroit, where the Lions absolutely spanked the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6. Let me repeat that. 52-6.
Yeah, that is their third 50 piece of the year. Let's think about that one for a second. But let's think about something else that I heard, rough numbers. In the past 8 quarters of Lions Jaguars, do you know what the score differential is?
What?
96-12.
Jesus.
Okay?
That is unheard. That is ridiculous. This is also too the Jags' worst loss in their franchise history. So the Lions actually gave the Cowboys their worst loss of their franchise history, and the Jags their worst loss of their franchise history. Absolutely wild. Lions look like the best team in the NFC right now at this point in time.
And it's really not close.
It's really hard to argue with it, but I mean, hey, I think the world wants a Lions Super Bowl.
I think Detroit's deserved one.
They've been through enough.
Give them something.
Please, anything. Oh man, let's move on to New England, where the Rams took on the Patriots 28-22. I gotta say, even though New England's not winning games, I like what I'm seeing out of Drake May. He looks like a very poised quarterback, and he's a very decisive quarterback. And even though the Patriots are not expecting to win anytime this year, I think that they are developing their players, and I think that that's a positive side forward.
Yeah, 100%. The Patriots are one of those teams that are on that wave of putting out your young quarterback and giving him the reps that they need to develop, and they're embracing them and giving them the pieces that they need over time.
Mm-hmm.
We could see some really good things come from the Patriots because this was a hard-fought game.
Absolutely. It was a fun game to watch, too. But not as fun as the Ravens Steelers game, my friend. That's always a fun game. But Steelers came out on top 18-16. Sifi, what were your thoughts on this one?
Again, I was pretty livid that this game wasn't broadcasted
I know.
at 1:00.
It should have been prime time.
But there was a couple of concerns that I saw on every side. Again, penalty trouble with Broderick Jones, three flags in one game when we had a total of under 5 penalties throughout the game. 3 were to him. He's become a hindrance on our offense. Major concern from the Ravens is Justin Tucker's leg is running out of gas, and to say the least is, age is getting to him, and it's becoming, he's no longer an ace. But shout out Chris Boswell because he has been in for the same amount. He has been an ace this year so far. So good on
Oh,
him.
absolutely, yeah. But no, and they won this game as the Ravens have with many games with Tucker, just by field goals.
Right.
And so the Steelers scored six field goals.
6. Yeah.
And it was and that was enough to beat us. And it's ironic that I picked the Steelers to beat us because I didn't trust our defense. And yet it was our defense that showed up, but our offense and special teams were the sides of the ball that let us down the most. We could not really get it going with Derrick Henry. Tomlin did a great job of getting physical at the line of scrimmage, which we've talked about Derrick Henry, and that first fumble really just
shout out.
It was a big momentum shift very early on in the game, and from that point on, it's like it was very difficult for the Ravens to get it going. Like you said before, with 2 missed field goals by Tucker, he's having his worst year statistically. But it's his 12th year. I do agree with you. He's not an ace anymore, and I would rescind Tucker territory. But until I see him get another 50-yard field goal, but I mean that's not likely to happen this season. So, but good for the Steelers. This was a good win for them. I know the Ravens. The road to the playoffs is not going to be as easy as it was last year, but I still have faith in them that they'll make it, and Lamar and Henry are still going to do great things the rest of this year. But man, this was a big win. Steelers are now they take the lead in the AFC North.
Yeah, and but again, like last year, my concern for the Ravens was the necessity of having him as the safety net to kick multiple field goals, and I'm going to be critical on my own team as well. Is games full of field goals will not win you games in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to take this win, and we need to score touchdowns actively. It's a good thing we have the Browns on a short week, but we need to get it together. This was one of the few games where we were allowed to not score touchdowns. There aren't going to be many more.
Yeah, and this was also one of the first games for Russell Wilson that he was really under a lot of pressure. I think we sacked Wilson 4 or 5 times throughout the game.
Well, it was a welcome to the AFC North.
It was a welcome to the AFC North, but
for him and Derrick Henry.
I just hope. Yeah, of course. I just hope that for their sake going forward, that they're able to keep the pressure off Russ, because when he's not under pressure, he looks great. He looks phenomenal. But obviously it's hard to make it's harder to make a 3rd and 16 than it is for a 3rd and 4. So
right, again, this was the first contending team that we were able to play this season.
Well, you had Washington.
They're competitors.
Well.
They're not top contenders. The Ravens are a top contender. Washington's a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
They're competitive. They're not contenders. They're not ready yet. They aren't ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a year or 2, then we'll talk. The Ravens are ready. They are contenders. This was the first contending team that this Steelers team has had to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only able to put up 6 field goals.
It's only going to get harder from here.
It's a little draw for concern.
Yeah, it's only going to get harder.
Right.
It's a game of attrition, my friend. Game of attrition. Let's move on to another division game in the NFC West. The Seattle Seahawks taking on the San Francisco 49ers, and Geno Smith and the Seahawks coming away with the last-second victory drive. 20-17 is the final. Seahawks are 5-5. The 49ers are 5-5, but the 49ers fall to 4th place in their own division.
That's a rough look.
Yes.
It's a rough look, but a strong outing for the Seahawks. They got to continue to fight to prove that they belong in the playoffs. Everyone wants to see a Geno Smith playoff run.
It'd be fun, but it's going to be hard too.
It's a hard road for Seahawks.
And this was a 60-minute game that Geno was willing to play out all 60 minutes, down to the wire, and it was really fun to see. But 49ers, man, we're going to get into them, man. They got a lot of concerns for this team. Let's move on to Denver, where the Atlanta Falcons came to the Mile High City to play the Broncos, and they got spanked by Bo Nix, 38-6. It was all Broncos all day. Um, I think this Bo Nix Sean Payton combo is really starting to pay off. The Broncos look really good, much like you, as you said with Washington. They're competitors, not contenders, but they're competitors.
My bold prediction about the Broncos potentially stealing a wild card spot looks a little bit more realistic now. You know, Bo Nix can lead a franchise. I've been saying that since he was drafted. He is in a great spot to learn from Sean Payton. Sean Payton has a good, young, strong mind to mold into the quarterback that he sees fit. Let it rip. Love what I saw out of that because I have a soft spot for Atlanta. And you guys just got rolled. I don't think anyone saw that one coming.
So the Broncos have played the entire NFC the NFC South this year, and they have beaten every team in the NFC South by over 20 points.
That's rough.
Yeah, they spanked that whole division.
Bo Nix says, I have arrived.
No, Sean Payton says that division's still mine.
Right, I still own that. Keep my seat warm, I'll be back.
I love it. Let's move on to Buffalo, which I think this may have been game of the week. The Buffalo Bills beating the Kansas City Chiefs 30-21. Ooh, CP, give me your thoughts on this one. It
was a good thing to watch. It was a good thing to see. It's a good thing to see them with the blemish. No one wanted to see it. No one wanted to see it. But Josh Allen, man, he really is playing his best football. Like, it's hard to not consider him in the MVP conversation. And
absolutely.
Those who don't, you're just delirious. He is playing his best football. It's not close. There's really only 3 or 4 quarterbacks that you can say are in that conversation right now. It would probably be Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. It would probably be Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, and maybe Jared Goff. I would probably put those 5 in there. Honorable mention would probably still be Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. But
hey, it was a great game to see, and I know we'll probably see a round 2 of this later on in the playoffs.
It's coming.
It just seems inevitable again that these two teams are going to find each other in the playoffs. So let's keep an eye out for that. But this was a really great game to see, which led us into the Sunday night primetime game. Another really fun game to see: the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers. But the Chargers with a big win, 34-27 over the Bengals. They got the lead early, and the Bengals tied it up. But the Chargers were able to exercise some demons after a couple of failed drives between the two teams. Got the 2-minute drill and won the game.
You see what happens when you develop a 2-minute drill and you play a full game? You can win.
Yes.
You can win late, and you can have something to talk about. You know, the Bengals are still trying to fight. So are the Chargers. You know, you have to prove that you can play a full game from here out. And this was a good showing for the Chargers, but it needs to be... Remember, once is an anomaly, twice is a pattern. You need to do it more than once. Don't forget how to do a 2-minute drill come this week.
Oh, yeah. And I think for the Bengals, the biggest pattern right now this season is Joe Burrow's playing his best football of his career. And they're squandering this season by still losing these games. Defensively, they are not a well-rounded team defensively. And you could clearly see that. But Joe Burrow, man, he's like leading the league in passing yards and tied for touchdowns. Jamar Chase is having another career year, leading the league in receiving yards. And they're still losing. They're 4-7 in the AFC North. That is tough. And there's a lot of good teams in the AFC this year. So they're not dead yet. But man, the road to the playoffs has just gotten a lot harder for the Bengals.
Got harder for a lot of teams this week. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So let's go to our final game of this past week, and that is the Houston Texans coming to Dallas to play the Dallas Cowboys. And it was Houston claiming the title of Texas's team. of 34-10. But big shout out to Joe Mixon. He had 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a phenomenal day. But man, the Cowboys. I, I don't know who's worse right now, Jets fans or Cowboys fans. It's pretty
It's
rough for both of
arguable.
these teams.
I don't know if you saw this. Before the game, the teams had to be escorted off the field because a piece of sheet metal fell off of the roof of the Cowboys Stadium.
I saw that, yeah.
Dallas is literally falling apart piece by piece.
hmm
Something needs to be done. Great win for Houston, more or less expected. But Dallas, come on, man. Now there's word. Saw word that Deion Sanders said that if the Dallas Cowboys were to draft his son, Shador Sanders, number 1 overall, which is a very good possibility that the Dallas Cowboys get the number 1 overall,
hmm
he would accept the coaching job in Dallas.
Oh, that would be big, and
That would be
I
huge.
I kind of it'd be so fun to talk about, but it's so speculative right now at the moment.
Right.
And right now, if the season were to end today, the Giants hold the first overall draft pick.
I thought
So
Jacksonville held it.
Giants,
Oof.
they lost to the Panthers.
Oh.
But so there's there's a lot of great teams in the league, but man, there are a lot of bad teams as well, right?
Right.
There's a balance in all things, and we've talked about it too. We've talked a lot of good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. But Dallas, man, it is
Ugly.
This is a one for the ages. This is one to forget for the ages.
Yeah, for sure. This is your worst record you've had in like 11 years.
Oh yeah, it is bad. Well, I mean, when the year Dak went down with injury, I think they went like 5-11 or something like that. So they're not far off.
Right. Not far off.
But man, it is rough in Dallas. So there you have it, guys. That is our Week 11 recap. So many great games this past week, but we have a lot of great games looking forward to this week. And we wanted to start by talking the Packers and the 49ers this weekend. This could potentially be a playoff game, but CP, I'll give you the torch, my friend. What are your thoughts going into this game?
Well, much like we were saying during the recap, going forward, with all these top teams, there's must-win games from here out. You have to win just about every game, especially division games.
Mhm.
So, Green Bay hosting San Francisco is enormous,
Mhm.
especially because Green Bay is coming off of their latest win.
Mhm.
This is a must-win because of playoff contention. If they were to lose this game, it would hurt them in standing.
Mhm.
So my issue with San Francisco, of course, is been the season worth of injuries.
Oh yeah.
But praise to Brock Purdy. He's playing some of his best football, keeping this team alive.
Mhm.
So this is a very evenly matched up game, even though the records don't show it.
Mhm.
And I think people are really misconstruing what the Niners are capable of, even with the injuries that they have.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is like Bosa's hurt, Greenlaw, Ayuk, McCaffrey was out for weeks, and this was his first game back against the Seahawks. And they did give him a lot of touches too throughout the game, but it wasn't enough. They can't solely rely on them. George Kittle, I think he is also questionable heading into this upcoming week. And as of 2 hours ago, Brock Purdy is looking questionable
Oh
for
my
this week
God.
too, with a shoulder injury. So the 49ers, as of this point now, we have not talked 49ers, and they are the last team that we spoke about. We have now spoken every single team, but for the Niners, they have really struggled this year with just injury and staying healthy. And that's not that's not the players' fault because obviously you don't plan to get injured, of course. But man, they are. I think that their top guys are so good that last year when everyone was healthy, they looked like juggernauts, right? Like they look like juggernauts. But the talent between their starters and their backups is enormous, and especially when it's like they're losing a lot of uh,
Key
skill,
positions.
yeah, exactly, key positions, and it's hard when every week you have new people having next man up. And the Niners are, this is not the first time under Kyle Shanahan where they've had a lot of injuries. The year after their first Super Bowl appearance against the Chiefs, they that COVID year, they had a lot of injuries in by week 3. A
I
big
remember that.
significant part of their players were injured, and this just seems to be like another one of those weeks, like or another year. It seems to be history repeating itself. The year after they had a Super Bowl against the Chiefs that they lost to, now a lot of their players are on injury again. It's tough too when we don't think of the playoffs where it's like, oh, it's more time being played for the players, right? But it's more time that they're more wear on their body. And the 49ers have been perennial playoff contenders, and that's what you want in a franchise, right? But they have played like their players probably have played like an extra season's worth of those games throughout those couple years, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it wears on your body a lot more. And so for key players like McCaffrey, Ayuk, Greenlaw, Trent Williams, George Kittle, like these guys have been there for a while, or for a good period of time. And it's like this was supposed to be the year that they were going to run it back, and because now a lot of their contracts are about to expire soon, and the 49ers have paid their top guys a lot of big money, and so in the reason they wanted to win now is because the 49ers in about maybe next year or the year after, the salary cap's coming to get them. And this team is going to be a lot different, and a lot of these vets are not going to be here probably after this year or the year after. So this was the last time, and the road to the playoffs has gotten so much harder for the 49ers now because again, they sit last in their division. They're 5-5. The Cardinals lead that division at 6-4. So it's not like that division isn't winnable. But man, it is. They have a tough road ahead of them too. And I just want to just go to their schedule real quick because they have so they have the Packers this upcoming week, which is obviously a really tough game, but I mean I'm excited for this one. And then they play the Bills, which that's a really tough one. The Bears, okay, that's winnable. The Rams, division game, that's tough. The Dolphins, with a healthy Tua in
It's
Miami,
more of a toss up.
that's a toss up. Against the Lions, that's a
We're
tough
not
game.
right.
And then you close the game with the Cardinals, and that potentially however they
May
do in
decide
that
the
stretch of
division.
time, that could decide the division right then and there. And that's in Arizona. And I think the Cardinals are. We should probably talk about them a little bit more as the season goes on. But man, because that game for the 49ers, it's like that could be your do or die right there. And we could easily not see the 49ers even make the playoffs this year because there's a lot of good NFC teams right now. The Packers are third in their respective division, and they're 7-3.
Right.
It's because the Lions are absolute juggernauts, and the Vikings are here and have arrived. And Sam Darnold said, "Hey, look, I'm going to have my best year as a Viking."
Right.
And the Vikings are was it 8-2, Lions 9-1, Packers 7-3. If the Packers were in the 49ers division, they'd be leading that division, right? But the Packers and the Niners too have been in a lot of close games, and the luck kind of swings one way for the Packers and swings one way for the Niners. A lot of games for the Niners, a lot of their losses were very winnable for them, even despite all the injuries. different play here and a different play there could change the outcome of the game, and they could be leading their division, but they just are not healthy enough to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, 100%. And just like you said, when it comes to the first string to the second string talent gap, we all saw this coming. You and I have spoken on the first line of the San Francisco 49ers to nauseum. When they are together, they are the most dynamic team in football.
Mhm.
It's just, this is now the time when the ugly side of those contracts rear their ugly head. It's the cap is going to hit, and you're not going to be able to afford multiple. So you're going to have to let them go. Trent Williams is probably going to retire. I believe he's in year 12
Mhm.
as a Hall of Fame lineman. So you could think if he has one more great year left in him, it's this year. And even now, he's injury ridden. So will he come back? That's a major question. If not,
Doubtful, man.
doubtful. If he does not come back, that is the key hole that you now need to fill, and those are unfillable shoes. Just without saying it, it's like trying to fill Jason Kelce. It's just they're unfillable. You just need to put someone there and hope for the best.
Mhm.
You're never going to get another Trent Williams. He was just a different level of lineman. So this 49ers team is really staring the reality in the face of really headhunting for a lot of key players up front and not building for depth. Because again, like we always say, this is the game of attrition, and you need to have not severe gaps in key positions to play. And that because come late in the game, you need someone to be great, and if they simply are not a great player, you're expecting too much. And when you have elite and people who just simply don't have the reps to have a notable report card, that's an issue, especially going into late in the year. And that's a real major concern for San Francisco going forward.
Oh, 100%. 100%. You hit the nail right on the head. And I feel for the Niners, though, but at the same time, I kind of don't. Because it's like, this is kind of what, like, they've been really good for a long period of time under Kyle Shanahan. It's like, no, this is kind of like...
This is a full circle moment.
This is like, they're mortal now, right? It seems like an absolute Atlas, like, demigod titan, now back to mere mortal. And it's like, okay, you're injured, and not every game is like, oh, Niners gonna win. They don't have that benefit of the doubt anymore. At least not this year. And I mean, I give credit to Brock Purdy. He's been good, but he's not the reason they're losing. But man, like, his stats are against the Seahawks. They were really, again, mortal. Very, very mortal, because he had 159 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I mean, they did want to get the ball going with McCaffrey, as they should have. Absolutely, he had 19 touches, and a touchdown, so he was absolutely solid. But aside from Purdy, his number one target now is Juwan Jennings,
and there just simply aren't enough reps.
Yeah, and Debo, like, he was a ghost. I don't know where was Debo again against Seattle, and I don't think he's hurt. Checked on the injury report. I didn't see Debo was hurt. He played.
He was just absent.
He was just gone. And Debo, like, he's a big difference maker. But I gotta say though, Debo's not as fit as he once was. He's not as fast. He's not as dynamic as he has been. He's been, I think this is the heaviest Debo has been.
Right, and
he bulked up, and it's like, he's not that same player that we've seen him before. So, and I like Debo. When they were rolling, he was one of my favorite players to watch. But man, it's like, I'm trying to look for him. I can't even find him. It's Juwan Jennings and Juszczyk, and then
and that's really it.
And then McCaffrey now, but now McCaffrey comes in a little too late, and I hope the 49ers season, like, it's not lost. Again, they're 5-5, right? They control their destiny from here. But man, it has to start with Green Bay this week. Because if you move to 5-6, and the Packers have a tiebreaker over you, that makes getting a wild card even a little bit more difficult.
Right.
Because the Packers, it's like, again, they could win the NFC North, but the Vikings look good and the Lions look fucking excellent.
Right. Something would have to go terribly, terribly wrong.
So it's like, it's not likely. They could win the North, but it's not likely at this point in time. So if they're going to get in with a wild card, that means some teams are not going to get in, like the 49ers. And it could just come down to, again, that Niners-Cardinals game at the very end. But let's keep in mind, too, the Cardinals beat the Niners earlier this year in an upset, in a one-possession upset. It was 23-21. Now Seattle beat the Niners. The Rams beat the Niners on a comeback. All the NFC West teams came back to beat the Niners. This is a pattern with Kyle Shanahan teams where it's like they get up and they can't stay up. They can't sustain a lead. We saw it in the Super Bowl. Both Super Bowls, too, against the Chiefs. This is just a pattern with Kyle Shanahan where it's like, this, I guess, is that new culture, because it's like we've talked about, like, where some teams you just can't escape just who they are historically. And right now the Niners have been, in all reality, a great team that can just get in their own way and allow teams to come back and win the games. They give the team an opportunity to win. And it's unfortunate because it's like that's not complimentary football, and that's not the teams that we see in January and February.
Yeah, 100%. And the Green Bay is the last team you want to keep in the game and give an opportunity to win at the end, because they will. They just will. They know how to win games, and they know how to win games abruptly when they're down. But when it comes to San Francisco, with them not leaving teams in the game, that is 100% on coaching. So I agree with you totally. That's a theme with Kyle Shanahan. And I don't want to say he is also responsible for the injuries that have happened to his team, but conditioning runs hand in hand with completing a football game and playing tired and getting hurt. So while I'm not holding him responsible for the physical injuries that happened on field, I will hold him responsible for the lack of conditioning that you are leading your team in week after week. You have to be able to, you have to condition your team to play longer than a game. And you have to put in reps of full contact practices. If you're not, you need to do it. And if you're doing it, you need to do it more, because your team needs to be ready. You know, and you should have been doing these reps earlier on in the year, and it's showing that you didn't.
Yeah.
Because the teams that do it are the ones that are steps ahead. You can tell Kansas City does it. You can tell Detroit does it. You can tell Houston does it. You can tell a bunch of teams do it. Green Bay you can tell Green Bay did it because they're healthy.
Yeah, they're as healthy as they can be. And Jordan Love was, I guess, the one most injured so far by the Packers.
The ribs so far.
With I think it was his knee in week 1 against the Eagles.
Oh, it was Jaden Daniels with his rib. You're right. It was his knee.
And yet, good on the Packers that I think it's a testament to Matt LaFleur's coaching, where it's like even they can win games even without Jordan Love, and with Malik Willis earlier on in the year. So it's like it's pretty impressive to see too, where it's like, and CP, let me ask you, mate. One of the biggest things here is where they're playing. They're playing in Lambeau. How does the human body feel when you're injured and you step into the cold?
Well, when you're physically injured at current time and it's cold, it hurts. But it's not even the injuries that you have. It's the injuries that you've had. So now think about San Francisco, right? Think about the Christian McCaffrey going into Green Bay with all the healed injuries that he has. The arthritic pain is different. That's the tension in your body that doesn't go away when it's cold. You can play through the normal injury, like bruises and shit that you have to tape up for the game. That's fine. That's normal pain. It's the arthritic pain that makes you play different because you have to walk differently or because you have to shift your weight differently because it feels like if you move that wrong way, you're going to tear something. And that's something that mentally is always in the back of your head come the cold weather.
Mm-hmm.
You know as well as I do, once it's cold, everything starts to hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't play a full speed, full contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
So now think about this injury-ridden team walking into one of the coldest places in the middle of the afternoon late in the year.
With your season kind of on the line.
Right. With a team that's conditioned to play in these conditions.
Yeah. And and the Packers, again, they've been a really fun team to watch too. Again, the Niners, it's like sometimes it's not who you play, but when you play them. And playing the Packers in September in Lambeau is a lot different than playing them come November. And there's going to be a lot of aching bodies in San Francisco coming into Lambeau. I will say one thing about this though with the Packers. I like what I'm seeing all around. I think they are a very good, well-rounded team. Their defense is playing complementary football with their offense, and vice versa. The one thing that just kind of makes me tickle my fancy is like sometimes Jordan Love can get possessed by the spirit of Brett Favre, and not the spirit where he's heaving like massive touchdowns. It's the reckless interceptions that are it's very weird. And it's like across your body, across the field. It's very bizarre. It's like, why would you throw that? But yet, at the same time, it's like, despite him doing that, he could still win you games, which is absolutely wild too. Where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna keep throwing it. He's unfazed, and he's always like short. He's got that short memory where it's like, okay, I threw an interception, so what? I'm going to keep throwing the ball. And we're still going to move down the field because we have great playmakers such as Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Luke Musgrove, Josh Jacobs, of course, at running back. And so they have a lot of great young guys, man, and a lot of great playmakers because it doesn't all fall on Love. And right now, and if you look at the team that they're playing right now, it's like a lot of it falls on Purdy because they ask a lot of him. Whereas for the Packers, it's like they ask Love to just be who he is and trust the people around him. And, it's like you said, they're the healthier team. They're the younger team. And they're playing in Lambeau where, they love to play in Lambeau. And there's been a lot of classic 49ers Packers games throughout the years too. Like these guys have had like one of those NFC rivalries for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And to think like a couple years ago, it was Aaron Rodgers and the 49ers. Oh, sorry, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers playing the 49ers in the NFC title game.
With Jimmy Garoppolo.
With Jimmy Garoppolo. And that was nearly 5 years ago. So these teams are completely different now. They have a new identity to them. And the Packers, it took them a little while to get comfortable because last year was the first year without Rodgers, obviously. And it wasn't until about this time last year that the eyes of the NFL kind of shifted towards Green Bay. And we started talking, it's like, oh no, they got something here. They found their guy. They found their identity. They're young and they can be very impressive. And their next 4 games after this week are primetime games.
And they're all winnable.
And the schedule makers they might be saying something to us. And I think that you're absolutely right. They are all winnable. Even the game against the Lions too. That's still a winnable game for the Packers. It's going to be a hard-fought game, but man, is that going to be a fun game to watch in primetime?
100%. I agree with everything you just said. And it's not even like because hats off to the Niners for putting that trust in Purdy to bring them to a 5-5 right now. As the stats want to go against Purdy this year,
Mhm.
but he's doing what he can with the least he's ever had in this league.
Yes.
So you got to take that one into account. This is the least amount of weapons he has ever had.
Yep.
And he was considered Mr. Irrelevant, and he is still keeping this Niners team in competition for a playoff run
Mhm.
with Kyle Shanahan as a coach, Christian McCaffrey in and out with injuries, and this year you've just been unlucky at every chance you get. So it's not even like the Niners don't trust him like the Packers trust Jordan Love. It's just the unfortunate circumstance is, again, it's the conditioning. Matt LaFleur has his team conditioned and ready to win everybody on the sidelines.
Mhm.
The Niners get lost amongst themselves because everyone thinks they need to be that guy who is replacing Deebo Samuel,
Mhm.
that guy who's replacing Brandon Ayuk, that guy who's replacing Trent Williams. When we don't need someone to replace, we need you to be you and help us win this game.
Mhm.
Stop trying to be them and give us what you're capable of. Because you're only hurting us and yourself when it comes to trying to play like someone else.
Mhm.
Play like yourself and just give it everything you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this coaching matchup too because Shanahan and LaFleur, they're from like the same coaching tree too. They was it those two, McVay, were all once like coordinators under Washington, and then they all got went different paths and had different varying levels of success in the league too. And I think that Matt LaFleur, he's one of those coaches where he's easily overlooked because of just how much talent he's had to work with. And obviously early on in his coaching career, he had Aaron Rodgers in his prime, just winning MVPs, and it's like it made Matt LaFleur look really good. And I think that honestly, I'm more impressed with his development of these younger players last year and this year than his years with Rodgers. I think that this is more indicative of his coaching style, where he's a leader in the locker room and has a vision for this team going forward. And and there's a lot of great praise for Kyle Shanahan too, and he's been a great coach since he's been with the Niners too. Obviously, he's not above criticism. He has had a couple, there's things to criticize about Kyle Shanahan, but he's been a lot of coaches in this league would love to make 2 Super Bowl appearances and be in 5 conference title games.
Right.
So, uh, so Kyle Shanahan, I wouldn't expect him to even lose his job after this, though.
Mm-mm.
But
just a bad turn of the cards. He's not going anywhere.
It's a bad turn of the cards. But man, it's going to be tougher for him going forward because again, he's not going to have those vets with him anymore. And
Right.
so let's see him develop a lot of young guys. If Brock Purdy is kind of like the example of Kyle Shanahan's development, then they're in good hands. They'll be fine because Brock Purdy is fine. And I think that them committing to him, I think that was the right move. And I know for a while too, it's like the 49ers were a team where it's like, oh, we have all these weapons, but we just don't have the quarterback to do it. Well, you have it now this year. You have the guy.
Now you just don't have anyone to throw to.
You just don't have it. Yeah, everyone around him just kind of fell apart. And that's not anyone's fault, but it's going to make their chances for the playoffs a lot harder going forward.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to be interesting to see which pieces get moved after this year in San Francisco, like who they decide to pay, who they decide to let test free agency, or who they decide to trade away. And then that's going to be the real look at Kyle Shanahan as a coach, bringing in a bunch of young guys versus having the veterans in the locker room. It's how can Kyle Shanahan conduct the locker room?
Yep.
Matt LaFleur had to learn how to do it on the fly. Aaron Rodgers left, and they all looked to him, and he was like, okay, let's go. Yep. And off to the races it went.
Yep.
So, Kyle Shanahan, you're up next. We've seen a lot of coaches get handed this challenge of grappling a locker room and you've seen a lot of them come out and become powerhouses in this league.
Mhm.
D'Amico Ryan on Houston is one of them.
Mhm. Well,
Um,
there's a lot of coaches, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Go ahead.
Where it's like the best coaches evolve over time, and
Right.
they're willing to change. Like for instance, Andy Reid, right? Like for years he had Alex Smith, and then they were solid, right? But he wanted to be better, and then
Right.
entered Patrick Mahomes. Belichick for all his coaching tenure, right, has had
Mm-hmm.
multiple different offensive schemes, right? And so, uh, yeah, so with the Packers too, it's like, and 49ers, it's like, okay, can Kyle Shanahan evolve with his team?
Right. It's how can you look at the blueprint of your team and go from there?
Mhm.
You know, you look across, you look at Green Bay, you look in the same division, you look at Detroit. I know we rear back to Detroit when it comes to a young coach grappling a locker room, but he is the epitome of I was handed a plate of shit and I came out on top with one of the strongest teams in the league because I sent the message and it was clear.
Yep.
So Kyle Shanahan, you will not get the hand that Dan Campbell was handed. That is just simply true.
Mhm.
You will not get handed that. You have a bunch of players that will be looking to you once these veterans are gone, and it will be interesting to see how you capitalize.
Oh yeah. There's going to be a lot of eyes on the 49ers going forward for the rest of this year and just next year in general. So we'll have to see where they kind of fall by the end of this year, and I'm very curious to see how they look just this game. What type of 49ers team are we going to get in Lambeau this week? And that's a question that I think there's gonna be a fun answer to that
Right.
on Sunday.
This game's going to be fun.
I'm excited for this. Any final thoughts on this game?
No, this should be a really good coaching outing. I think when it comes to people who want to see firework type touchdowns, I don't think this is the game for it. This is going to be a methodical defensive north-south game, mostly running, a lot of running, short passes. It's going to be a big feel-out process because the both of them are trying to play for a playoff spot, and they're both trying to play to keep as healthy as possible.
Absolutely, well said. And it's just going to be a great chess match between these two, and I'm excited for it. So let's move on to our second game that we wanted to talk about this week, and that is the Ravens and the Chargers. Ironically, CP was the one that I actually wanted to talk this game, so
Yeah,
I'll
you can
I'll let
take this one. No.
you want me to
You
you want
can
me to
take
start?
this one.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. So I guess let me start with the Ravens. I guess that's the easiest one.
It's the best way to rip that Band-Aid off, pal. Go ahead.
Again, I think that we are a great team, but yet a very flawed team. And it's very weird because it's like, what type of Ravens team am I getting this week? Am I getting the team that's going to absolutely dominate and do what they do best and lean into their strengths in running the ball and um and playing very good run stop defense? Yeah, I would love to see that. Or are we going to be the Ravens team that gets 12 penalties like we did in Pittsburgh? That just keeps deflating our offense and just can't get it going. And I use the comparison of Derrick Henry like a chainsaw, and he needs a couple revs. But that seems to be the Ravens' offense in total, where it's like if we can't get the running game going, then our offense is really stalled out. And that's a big problem, too, especially when you have Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers on the other side. After Mike Tomlin basically gave Jim Harbaugh a blueprint on like, here, this is how you stop him. Where it's like, hey, we've had success against Lamar for a while. And obviously, again, the team is the Ravens. We are going to live and die by Lamar, and I'm fine with that. I love Lamar, uh, but man, like there are some games where it's like he, much like the AFC title game that we talked about before, he gets too emotional and he plays too tight and he constricts a lot and he doesn't really see the field too much. It kind of gets very narrow for him. Um, but there are other games where it's like, it's wide open. Uh, with the Chargers, I think the Chargers are such a very interesting team because for a while they've been so talented, right? And now you have the coaching leadership that has elevated this team. When this offseason, they got rid of a lot of players. This was a very different Chargers team last year to this year. They kept, their core people. They made the smart draft choice. I think Joe Alt is an absolute stud. And the Chargers, I know it was not the sexiest pick in the draft to take a tackle so high, especially when you had talented wide receivers like Malik Neighbors still on the board. But they made the smart choice because now they have an identity. And their identity is they're going to have a run-oriented approach to their game, which is going to open up the passing lanes for Justin Herbert. And Herbert right now, the best thing they could do is keep this tandem going because they are only going to get better as the years go on. Herbert he's been one of those great quarterbacks that he's had just a carousel of coaches coming in. And what was it? I know his first year, I forget who it was, not Lovie Smith, but someone. I think it was Raheem Morris, actually. Yeah, Raheem Morris's first year. And then Brandon Staley after that. And Brandon Staley, I didn't think was too bad, but he just could not really get that team to winning to their true capabilities. Enter Jim Harbaugh. He says, "Okay, you guys have a good foundation, but we're gonna trade some players. We're gonna get some picks. I want to run the ball. Let's get some big boys up front. We're gonna play old school style football. We're gonna run first, then pass, and we're gonna really play physical at the point of attack on defense." And Derwin James, he's having a really good year right now. There's a rookie. His name is Hart. I think he's number 20. He's a cornerback. He's a 5th-round cornerback, and he's starting. He started against the Bengals, and he was actually pretty good against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But again, the Chargers, we see it time and time again with the 2-minute drill.
Right.
The Bengals were able to tie that game and really get it close and make it sweat for the Chargers until the Chargers finally were like, okay, look, we're going to get this drive, we're going to get this touchdown, we're going to get these points, and we're going to win this game. Because Jim Harbaugh has just really inspired them so much. And much like we talked about with Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur, and obviously John Harbaugh too, where it's like all these coaches, these are really good coaches that's like they have an identity for their team and a way to win games. But man, if there's any person that could another great coaching matchup this week, it's John and Jim Harbaugh, man. And now it's John Harbaugh again. I think what the big advantage for the Ravens here is Jim Harbaugh, since going to college after being coach of the 49ers, he went to Michigan. He had good success in Michigan. He was able to win them that national title after many, many years of just grinding it out year after year. The big advantage here is Jim Harbaugh has not really seen a player like Lamar Jackson or Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson's one of one. I'm sure maybe they played maybe once or twice in college, but Lamar has developed beyond what he was in college. And like he is a quarterback now that teams that don't see him very frequently, or play against him very often, they don't know how to prepare for him. And I think that's, and obviously we still have Derrick Henry. Keep giving him the rock. Keep good things happen. But man,
Jim Harbaugh did not play him in college.
Oh, so
he's never seen Lamar Jackson.
He's never seen Lamar Jackson, and Lamar, he's special, man. That's the thing is like he's already like a Hall of Fame caliber player, which is crazy to think about, and he is just one of one, and it's so hard to prepare against him, but this game I is going to be another fantastic chess match between these two teams. Both have their strengths that they have leaned into Both are run-oriented teams. They really lean into that. But their defenses are still susceptible. So it's like the Chargers and the Ravens at this point in time. Obviously, the Ravens, we've had a lot more success and bigger wins and bigger numbers, but they're kind of like a mirror of each other. You have two stud quarterbacks with a good running game, susceptible defense,
and some flaws,
and a lot of flaws. But this is going to be a really good chess match between John and Jim Harbaugh, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well said. Well said. So, just like the game that we just spoke, Niners-Packers, this game is a must-win when it comes to playoff standing moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge for both of you guys. My one issue going into this game is I don't want to. It's not that it's really an issue with the Ravens. Like you said, you want them to play to their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
You guys' strength is you guys like to bully teams.
Mm-hmm.
You like to do what you can quick and get your way and have your way. Teams know that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start leaning too heavy on your strengths, sometimes it's easier to step aside and let your own leaning be your downfall. Where we can prepare to let you guys try and bully till you fall on us, and then we're going to capitalize on your mistakes.
But what do you mean by bully?
You guys are bullies. Like, you guys like to force the ball down the field. You can do it at will. You guys are very lethal as an offense.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute, like you said, you guys are like a chainsaw. It takes revs, right? The minute a gear gets stuck, you guys start forcing things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where teams get you.
Mm-hmm.
You guys start forcing, and that's where forcing plays to happen, and that's where mistakes happen. That's where penalties happen. That's where turnovers happen. That's where fourth and longs happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by bully. You guys like to entice your will throughout the game because you guys have that in store. You can do that to a lot of teams. But like you said, Mike Tomlin made the blueprint on how to counteract that.
He's had the blueprint.
He's had it for years now.
He's had it. Lamar's 1-4 against Tomlin as a starter, I think.
Something like that. I think in the last 8 meetings, you guys have won one.
Yeah.
Or something, or maybe 9 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Harbaugh is going to see that. He sees, and he has the defense, and he has the know-how from being a Michigan coach. He brought a lot of Michigan into LA when it comes to how they play, the physicality in which they do, and how methodical he is when it comes to breaking teams down and making them forms their own demise, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are really going to have to dig deep and force your will early on this team. Because if you don't, again, it's Justin Tucker not being the automatic. It's and I've been saying this for a couple of years now that the Ravens, sometimes they fall into issues of not being able to score touchdowns, knowing that they have Justin Tucker in the backfield. And now he is not that guy anymore, which is fine because of age. But you cannot fall back into the old habit of not being able to score touchdowns.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like field goals are nice, but touchdowns win you games.
Right. And field goals aren't going to win you games late in the year.
And that's the thing too. Is like against the Chargers, field goals are not good enough. We got to score touchdowns, especially like to your point too, where it's like for playoff standings. With you guys beating us this past week, obviously you guys take the North. Right now, that puts us second in the division, and we would then be fighting for a wild card with the Chargers. So this tiebreaker could really determine seeding there. I mean, it's looking more than likely. Again, playoffs are not guaranteed. No team has clinched playoffs yet. There's a lot that could happen from now until the end of December. So playoffs are not even guaranteed at this point, but just the way that both of these teams look this year. Both of these teams look like playoff contending teams.
Without a doubt.
And so I think for the Chargers, it would be very great to see their Jim Harbaugh under his first year get a playoff appearance. If he gets a playoff win, that would be huge too.
That would be enormous on his debut season.
But I think that a playoff appearance is on the horizon. It's in the books too. But it's also crazy too because the AFC West is actually pretty tough this year too, when you look at it too. So obviously the Chiefs are 9-1 right now as it stands. Chargers are 7-4. Broncos are 7-5. So and there's only like 2 games between
right. There's like a game and a half between everybody.
And the Chargers do play the Chiefs later on in a primetime game in a couple weeks down the road, so that could be very big for seeding as well. And obviously the Raiders are just bottom dwelling. They're eating algae.
They're shooting for a lotto pick at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they're doing in Vegas, but the Broncos are formidable. The Chargers are formidable, and the Chiefs. We know what the Chiefs are, and the Chiefs are as good as they are. Again, a flawed team as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that first game that the Chargers played against the Chiefs only won by just that making that last drive comeback. But the Chargers really kept it close, kept it tight against the defending Super Bowl champs. Jim Harbaugh really has his guys playing well. And there's something to be said about just great coaches that players want to play for. And a lot of players want to play for Jim Harbaugh. And it's good to see because you could see it too. It's like they take pride in, their team, and they're excited for big wins and upset with losses, right? They're very passionate. And that's one thing about Jim Harbaugh is he's a passionate guy. And I think for the Chargers are a team that's like they've been snake bitten as a franchise for a long, long, long time. But getting him in that building was probably the best decision they could have made this offseason. And I hope it sets them up for a lot of success down the line in the future.
It will. It's and you see that on the other side of the field too with John Harbaugh. They're both very passionate, and it's a good breath of fresh air for the Chargers. You know what I mean? They both are extremely good coaches. They both send extremely good messages. And I think it's going to be a really good future if and when the Chargers ultimately commit to Harbaugh after this season. I don't think he's signed I think he's on like a 1-year contract just to show I don't think he's on a huge deal right now.
I thought he was on like a 4-year deal.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could have sworn it was like a quick deal, but he could very well look at an extension if he does wind up with a playoff win, is what I'm getting to.
He signed a 5-year deal with the Chargers.
Good for him.
Yep.
Even with that, a playoff win could probably see him with an extension. He sends a really good message. Like you say, the guys, they wrap around him real well. He sends a message that a lot of these young guys can still commit to because he's coming back with a college mentality to a pro team, which are still just a bunch of young college guys. So he's coming in with the mentality of how to rein in young talent to win football games and win them with like an older mentality when it comes to an offense. We're going to run, we're going to put an extra lineman on the field, we're going to run it down the field for 4 quarters, and we're going to score touchdowns, and we're going to play, and we're going to have a 2-minute game. It's peeking its head around that they have one. Like I said, once is an anomaly, twice is a pattern. So the last 2 minutes of this game is where all focus should be on that Chargers offense.
Yep. The Chargers offense and that defense too, because they got to...
Right. They got to close out a game too.
Exactly. You got to play situational ball, and however the cards fall, it's a 60-minute game. You got to play until the whistle. Right. And these two teams, again, last week, I picked the Chargers to win against the Bengals. And I was like, if they win this, they kind of put themselves on the map. Where it's like, okay, they're contenders. If the Chargers come away and beat the Ravens, that's a statement win.
That would be a
That's
statement win late in the year.
that's a big statement win. And I think that again, this game is going to be, I guess, pun intended, very electric. And man, I really want to see them in the playoffs. Obviously, I want to see the Ravens in the playoffs and make it all the way, and I think that they can. The Chargers, they got some tough competition ahead of them too. Obviously, they play the Chiefs, but a lot of their games are still, again, very winnable. Like here, so they play the Ravens, right? After the Ravens, they play the Falcons. Okay, that's
Winnable
a good
game.
one. The Chiefs, that primetime game.
Can't say it's not a winnable game. It's
especially with the Chiefs have been looking, but I mean that is
Chiefs
an
are the
Arrowhead.
Chiefs.
That's tough.
It's right.
It's really that's a tough game, but it's still a winnable game. The Bucks, that could be. Broncos, again, formidable competition, but then you close off with the Patriots and the Raiders, and those, I think that if they're able to get through the next 5 weeks, if they go say 2-3 in the next 5 weeks, and then you win those last 2 games, you go 4-3, you get 11-7. I think that's a good enough to get you into the playoffs.
It would have to depend on who else loses.
Sorry,
that
11-6.
11-6 is a great record, but you got to look at what's happening with Denver. You got to see how they're doing. Got to see,
Exactly.
You got to see how these other teams are doing. Both conferences are split by between half a game and a game and a half. You have you got the two front runners right now. That's Kansas City and Detroit. And then the rest of the league is locked.
The rest of the league is open because it's
really locked in competition where it's like one game can set everything up in flames.
Oh, absolutely.
It's deadlocked. Everyone needs to win. You need to win your games, and if you lose a singular game, it could drop you immensely in playoff contention.
It's crazy too. I didn't think the playoffs started in November, but here we are.
It feels like every year since we've started this podcast, the playoffs have started a little bit earlier when it comes to the competition in games every year.
Yep.
We are not even in the middle of November yet, and we are talking about playoff stipulations when it comes to winning and losing games because of the competition on both sides.
Yep.
We've spoke about it on the AFC side because this has been like that for years. The conversation is now that it's happening on the NFC side, and now both sides are deadlocked at a half a game split.
Yep.
That is what's making the last couple of years so fun to watch because of the competition of 30 teams out of 32.
Yep. The other two would just be the Jets and Giants.
Right. I mean, there's still competition amongst the bottom of the barrel, too. Like, they play amongst themselves, and there's some competition there. Let the kids play, then the adults play, and then you have the Chiefs and the Lions on their own platform.
Oh, man. I would like to see this Ravens-Chargers game. I'd like to see that go in a round 2 in January. That'd be fun.
It has a January vibe to it.
It does have a January vibe to it, and I like it. Man, this is prime time for a reason. This is that Monday night prime time, and there's a reason for it. Schedule makers, they know what they're doing.
They know what they did this week.
Let's get John and Jim Harbaugh. Let's get them on.
They know what they were doing this week.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I'm really excited for this one. But I was gonna say, do you have any final thoughts on this game?
You again, just must win for both teams. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Ravens, obviously, but I'm really going to be keeping an eye on that Chargers team because, like you said, they have a knack for getting in their own way. Mm-hmm. But as of late, so do the Ravens when it comes to penalties. Mm-hmm. So it's who's the cleaner Harbaugh this week? Who plays the cleanest?
Yep. Who doesn't let emotions get the best of them? And I think that's
a tall order for both teams.
I think that's really going to determine who wins it. And that's not a thing that's measured by stats. It's like, what can you see on the field? Who's keeping their composure?
On-field charisma.
Exactly.
On-field composure.
On-field discipline.
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that being said, those were the two games that we wanted to talk this week. A lot of great games. Looking forward to it. But CP, stretching, get that big stretch, baby. Get it going because you know what time it is.
Yeah,
It's
it's
time to
time.
make some picks for this week. So you ready to make some picks?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's start on Thursday, where the Steelers take on the Cleveland Browns. Short week for the Steelers. Another division game on on the road. But who you got, CP?
Come on, man. Got to go with Pittsburgh. Got to keep that ball rolling. They should have no problem trouncing the Browns on Thursday on a short week.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Steelers as well. I know off air, the matchup that we talked about was Broderick Jones and Miles
Miles
Garrett.
Garrett,
That's going to be
be a
really,
nightmare, but
yeah. So that's going to really be a tough night for Broderick Jones because it's tough to block Miles Garrett week in and week out. Um, but yeah, I'll take the Steelers. Tomlin just knows how to really coach against the Browns, and I don't really see this any differently than that. Let's move to Sunday's slate of games, starting with the Tennessee Titans taking on the Houston Texans. CP, who you got for this one?
give me Houston, man. They're on a roll again. Tennessee doesn't have much of an identity, and Houston's one of the top competitors in these leagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. And that's exactly why I'm going with the Texans as well. Uh, Tennessee, man, you got to find your identity other than Mayo. You got to get out of
You
that
gotta do
helmet
more.
stand.
You gotta do better.
Got to do better, man. But oh man. Let's move on to the Windy City of Chicago, where the Minnesota Vikings take on the Chicago Bears. Division round game late in November outside of the Windy City. But the Bears, they've been really struggling as of late. But CP, who you got for this one?
Again, you're gonna have to give me Minnesota, Chicago. Their offense is really unimpressive. History is doomed to repeat itself in Chicago. You could see it coming. But it's funny enough, little offhand tangent when it comes to Chicago, there's a lot less leniency this year when it comes to history repeating itself, if you've noticed. When it comes to Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, and Caleb Williams, when it comes to them having multiple coaches in 2 years, there was much more leniency for Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky.
Yep.
In terms of what's happening situationally.
Mhm.
There is a lot less margin for sympathy for Caleb Williams this year for a lot of people.
Mhm. Yeah, it's he's on a very short leash, and man, he's gonna get a lot of slack. Again, Matt Eberflus, he's probably gonna be gone at the end of this year. Nothing confirmed, but when you fire Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator, 2 weeks ago, uh, do you really expect the offense to get any better? It's not, and it hasn't. Um, Caleb's shown a lot of flashes, but let's be honest, those were against the Panthers and the Jags, and now we know what both those teams are.
Right.
I'm going to take the Vikings. They they are looking to surprise people in the playoffs, and it's getting a win over Chicago. I think that is a very doable task for the Vikings to advance their goals. So I'm going to take the Vikings to beat the Bears. Let's move to Washington, where the Dallas Cowboys come to play the Commanders in Washington. CP, who you got?
Washington, Dallas is like totally deflated. Again, this is a divisional game, so it's you can always say it'll go either way in division matchups, but Washington's on a whole different level than Dallas at the moment.
Yeah,
Dallas is lost.
yeah. I'm gonna go with Washington as well. Like the Cowboys are just without Dak, they are not the same Cowboys team. They struggle to even score 10 points. It is tough
Right.
in Dallas. Um, and Jerry, he's going to keep watching his boys just suffer week in and week out. And now Washington, hey, I'm excited to see them in the playoffs.
Right.
I think that they could be they're a team that I don't think anyone really wants to play in the playoffs. So I'm going to take Washington as well. Let's move to Miami, where the New England Patriots come to town to take on the Dolphins. I'm going to go with Miami on this one. I think now that they're healthy, they can really score points more at will. than with Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley. Tua's back; he's healthy, and if there's any indication of the Dolphins beating the Raiders last week, they can beat on the bad teams, and New England's one of the bad teams. So I'll take Miami.
Yeah, you're going to give me Miami too, but I am going to look very closely at Drake May and the Patriots. You know, this could be one of those good loss situations where if you play tough and you play together, you may lose, but you can keep it close.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's move on to Carolina. Chiefs take on the Panthers. Do I even need to ask you for this one, CP?
I almost feel I'm seeing another 50 piece on the board this week.
I'll be honest, I don't with the Chiefs. No, I don't see them. They have
they've struggled to score. They've only had one 30-point game, but they haven't played the doormats of the league yet this year.
True. If there is a game for them to score a lot of points, it's against Carolina.
This week.
This is that week. I don't think that they'll score 50. I don't think that team can score 50 this year. But
that doesn't much to be behold, but it's not possible. Not saying it's not possible.
It's not that it's impossible, but this is a very conservative Chiefs team where it's like they run the ball a lot, they play good defense, and Mahomes plays minimal mistakes, and they just keep winning. So let's take the Chiefs over the Panthers. Let's go to the MetLife, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on the New York Giants. CP, who you got for this one?
You're going to have to give me Tampa. Again, the Giants are shot just like the Jets, so it's not even a question who's going to win this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna take Tampa as well. I think that they could really kind of dominate the run on this one, especially with Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. They, despite losing Evans and Godwin, I think that they, since changing to a run team, they've kind of had their growing pains, but they can still win games. So I'm going to take the Bucs to beat the Giants on this one. Let's go to Indianapolis, where the Detroit Lions come to take on the Indianapolis Colts. CP, who you got?
You have to give me Detroit, but this could be a very interesting game. Indy's showing that they have a lot of trust in Anthony Richardson, and he's showing that he can put up points. So we're gonna have to see how this game turns out. This could be a really fun game.
Yeah. I mean, if there is going to be a 50-piece, I would put it on this one.
I don't know that Detroit has 2 50 pieces in a row.
Well, they've had 3 this year. I think Dan Campbell wants more. But
one after the next, that'd be wild.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
Buck wild.
And but what have we talked about with Indy before? Their defense, man. Their
secondary is shot.
So, I mean, hey, Jared Goff, he's playing at MVP caliber level too. So this is the best Goff that we've seen in a long time. And this Lions team, they are poised to just be in the Super Bowl this year. I'll take them over the Colts, but man, this could be a 50-piece right here.
Call on 2 50 pieces in 2 weeks. Jesus.
Let's go to Vegas, where the Broncos take on the Raiders. CP, I'm guessing you believe, man. You believe?
You want to talk about a likely 50-piece after putting 38 on Atlanta. Maybe 50-piece on with Denver in a divisional game.
With how bad that Raiders defense is, yeah, I could see that.
Not saying it ain't. Listen, I think that one might be more likely than Detroit putting up a second in 2 weeks.
Ooh, okay.
A lot of points coming up this week.
That's so true. So you taking the Broncos?
Taking the Broncos by a long shot.
Yeah, I'm taking the Broncos as well. Let's move on to a game that we kind of wanted to talk this week. The Cardinals and the Seahawks in Seattle. This is a very interesting game because if Seattle wins this game, they take the lead in the NFC West. They would have that tiebreaker over the Cardinals. Cardinals are 6-4. Seahawks are 5-5. It's very tight in the NFC West right now. CP, who you got for this one?
You're gonna have to give me Arizona, man. They are scrappy. I like what I see from them. They're young, they're fast, and they play together. Um, Arizona seems to be turning out to be one of those teams that you don't want to play late in the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. There hasn't been a big spotlight on Arizona this year, but they are really exceeding their own expectations. Kyler Murray, with all his criticisms and stuff like that, he really is the heart and soul of that team. Like he is the engine, or I guess the little engine that could uh, for this team. This is a tough one. I'm really stuck at this one. I think I'll take Seattle
Okay,
on this one, just to really shake up that division. And I don't
that
think
would be
that
a good shakeup.
it'd be a good shakeup. It's just really tough to play in Seattle. And now that win over the 49ers, that was a big emotional win for them because like they really had to fight to get back in that game. So I'm gonna take Seattle to on the upset over Arizona.
Very cool.
So which brings us to the 49ers and the Packers. So there was a lot to unpack with this one. CP, who you got for this one?
Even after we talk, this one's still tough. But you're gonna have to give me Green Bay. They're the healthier team. They're the more conditioned team going in. But I think San Francisco's still gonna go 10 rounds, even with whoever they have on the field, because that's just how Kyle Shanahan coaches.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Green Bay as well. They again for all the reasons you said, they're the healthier team. Just it's a good matchup, and again, it's really tough to play in Lambeau, especially when the 49ers are hurt as they are.
In the
And
cold.
with Brock Purdy being questionable with a shoulder injury this week, that shoulder ain't gonna feel better once they land in Wisconsin.
No.
So I'll take the Packers along with you, which brings us to our Sunday night primetime game, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. This should be a really good match. But who you got for this one, CP?
Give me Philly. They seem to have really turned it around back end of this year, and they are showing that they are still very capable of being top contenders in this league.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Philly as well. It's funny, like they're on like a 5-game win streak. They've been really hot as of late, and I mean we've seen this before, right? But Philly will. It seems like they like scrappy wins because they don't blow teams out. They really, even against Washington last week, it was 26-18. The game was really tight until Barkley got those 2 touchdowns late in the game. I'll take Philly. This isn't going to be a pretty game, but I expect this game to be a very physical game, and I'm looking forward to that.
100%.
Which brings us to our last game of the week. The Baltimore Ravens coming to LA to take on the Chargers. CP, who you got for this one? I'm curious.
This one's tough.
This one is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I need the Chargers to win. It's just what it is. I need the Chargers to win.
So you picking them?
No. I'm not.
Ooh.
I think the Ravens are going to win. I think the Ravens are going to go into this with a bad taste in their mouth from last week because they really realized that they had a good hand in beating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to clean up, and I think that offense is going to revive itself against that defense.
I can't help but agree with you, man. I'm going to go with the Ravens as well. I think for some reason, and I don't know why, but Lamar loves Monday Night Football.
Right, he loves it.
I can't tell you how many times on Monday Night Football, he's had some of his best games. And the last time he played Monday Night Football, he had 5 touchdowns.
Right.
That was against Tampa, in Tampa, and that was it was a very tough fought game. But man, like Lamar, just once he got it going, it was over. I think that again for Jim Harbaugh, it's going to be very tough for him to A, game plan for Lamar, and then B, game plan for Derrick Henry,
And
because
be able to execute.
and execute both. And I think that you could stop one and slow down the other. But like Lamar said, like this is like a pick your poison offense. But I think that we're going to get a strong dosage of Derrick Henry on Monday night.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, guys. There's our picks for the week. Ravens, Chargers, San Francisco, Green Bay. Lots to unpack with both teams. Playoffs are right around the corner. It's in the air. So please leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you want to come on, there is still a little bit of time left before the postseason. Anybody want to come on for the postseason? We can schedule that once the bracket is made. But until then, it's going to be more exciting as the weeks go on.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.